What happens when a 73-year-old widower thinks he's found love again, only to discover he's been talking to a criminal mastermind who's already stolen $20,000 from his life savings? And what occurs when a mysterious hacker decides to turn the tables on this romance scammer in the most spectacular way imaginable? The scammer's reaction when their entire operation gets dismantled in real time is absolutely priceless, and the emotional rollercoaster that follows will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about online relationships and digital justice. This isn't just another story about cybercrime. This is about human vulnerability, technological warfare, and the moment when predator becomes prey in the most unexpected twist you'll ever witness. If you're ready to dive into this incredible story of deception, revenge, and digital vigilantism, please hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories that expose the hidden world of online scams and the heroes fighting back against them. Harold Peterson had been alone for 3 years since his wife Margaret passed away from cancer. Living in his quiet suburban home in Ohio, the retired accountant spent most of his days tending to his garden and video calling his daughter who lived across the country in California. The loneliness was overwhelming, especially during the long winter evenings when the house felt too big and too silent. That's when Harold decided to join an online dating platform specifically designed for seniors, hoping to find companionship in his golden years. Within days of creating his profile, Harold received a message from someone calling herself Isabella Rodriguez, a 58-year-old nurse from Miami who claimed to be recently widowed herself. Her profile picture showed a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, and her messages were filled with empathy and understanding about the pain of losing a spouse. Isabella seemed to understand Harold's grief in ways that felt genuine and comforting. Their conversations quickly moved from the dating platform to email, then to lengthy phone calls that stretched late into the night. Isabella had a slight accent that she explained came from her Colombian heritage, and she spoke passionately about her work helping elderly patients at a Miami hospital. She shared stories about her late husband, a construction worker who had died in an accident, leaving her to raise their teenage daughter alone. The parallels between their lives felt too perfect to be coincidence, and Harold found himself falling deeply for this woman who seemed to understand his pain so completely. For 2 months, their relationship blossomed through daily conversations, shared photos, and heartfelt declarations of love. Isabella sent Harold pictures of herself at work, at home cooking traditional Colombian dishes, and spending time with her daughter Maria. Harold reciprocated by sharing photos of his garden, his late wife's recipes that he was learning to cook, and stories about his grandchildren. The emotional connection felt real and profound, filling the void that had consumed Harold since Margaret's death. Then came the first request for money. Isabella explained through tears during a late-night phone call that her daughter Maria had been in a serious car accident and needed emergency surgery. The hospital was demanding a deposit of $5,000 before they would proceed with the operation, and Isabella's insurance wouldn't cover the full amount. She was desperate, sobbing as she explained that she had nowhere else to turn. Harold's heart broke listening to the woman he loved in such distress, and without hesitation, he wired the money to an account Isabella provided. 2 weeks later, another crisis emerged. Isabella's apartment building had suffered severe damage from a hurricane, and she needed $3,000 to secure temporary housing while repairs were made. Harold sent the money immediately, his protective instincts overriding any doubts that might have surfaced. When Isabella's mother in Colombia supposedly fell ill and needed expensive medication, Harold wired another $4,000. Each request came with emotional phone calls, detailed explanations, and promises that Isabella would pay him back as soon as her insurance settlements came through. The requests continued escalating. Isabella claimed her nursing license was being threatened due to false accusations from a disgruntled patient, and she needed $8,000 for legal fees to fight the charges. Harold emptied his savings account, convinced that he was helping the woman he planned to marry overcome temporary hardships. The total amount he had sent reached $20,000, representing nearly half of his retirement savings. Meanwhile, a YouTuber who we must keep anonymous for his safety had been monitoring romance scam operations across multiple platforms. This individual, whose life's work focuses on fighting against scammers and protecting vulnerable victims, had developed sophisticated techniques for tracking and infiltrating criminal networks. Through careful analysis of communication patterns, financial transactions, and digital footprints, he had identified Isabella Rodriguez as part of a larger romance scam operation based in Lagos, Nigeria. The hacker had been watching Harold's case develop for weeks, gathering evidence and preparing to intervene. He discovered that Isabella was actually a 24-year-old man named Emeka who operated multiple fake profiles simultaneously, targeting lonely elderly Americans with elaborate romantic deceptions. The photos Isabella had been sending were stolen from a Colombian nurse's social media accounts, and the emotional stories about her daughter and mother were fabricated narratives designed to manipulate victims into sending money. On a Tuesday evening, as Harold was preparing to send another $5,000 for Isabella's supposed medical emergency, the hacker struck. He had gained access to Emeka's computer system and phone, allowing him to monitor the scammer's communications in real time. As Emeka was typing another manipulative message to Harold, his screen suddenly went black, then displayed a message that read, "Your scamming operation ends not now." The hacker had not only taken control of Emeka's devices, but had also accessed his email accounts, social media profiles, and communication with other victims. In a matter of minutes, he systematically dismantled the entire operation. He sent messages to all of Emeka's current victims, revealing the truth about their supposed romantic partners and providing evidence of the deception. He forwarded all of Emeka's communications to local authorities and international cybercrime units. But the most devastating blow came when the hacker activated Emeka's webcam and began recording his reaction. The scammer's face showed pure panic as he realized his entire operation was being exposed. He frantically tried to regain control of his devices, typing desperately on his keyboards as error messages continued appearing on his screen. The hacker had locked him out of everything, including the bank accounts where he had been storing his victims' money. The recording captured Emeka's increasingly frantic attempts to salvage his operation. He made phone calls to accomplices, warning them that their network had been compromised. He tried using backup devices, only to discover that the hacker had anticipated these moves and blocked his access to all associated accounts. The man who had spent months manipulating vulnerable elderly victims with fake emotions was now experiencing genuine terror as his criminal empire crumbled around him. Harold received a detailed email from this anonymous hacker explaining exactly what had happened. The message included screenshots of Emeka's real communications with accomplices, photos of the actual Nigerian man behind the Isabella persona, and evidence of similar scams targeting dozens of other victims. The emotional impact on Harold was devastating. The love he thought he had found was entirely fabricated, and the woman he had planned to marry existed only in his imagination. The hacker had managed to freeze several accounts containing money stolen from various victims, though recovering Harold's $20,000 would require cooperation from international law enforcement agencies. The process would be lengthy and uncertain, but at least the scammer's operation had been completely shut down, preventing him from victimizing others. This story represents just one of hundreds of similar incidents that occur daily around the world. While not all victims are fortunate enough to have someone intervene on their behalf, Harold's experience serves important educational or original purposes. Romance scammers prey on genuine human emotions, exploiting loneliness and the desire for connection to steal life savings from vulnerable individuals. Please be extremely careful when forming online relationships, especially when money requests become involved, no matter how legitimate the circumstances may seem. The aftermath of exposing Harold's romance scammer revealed layers of complexity that most people never see when these operations get shut down. Our anonymous hacker friend, who will continue protecting for his safety, discovered that this wasn't just a single person operating from a bedroom somewhere. The scammer Harold had been communicating with was actually part of a sophisticated network spanning multiple countries, with different individuals handling various aspects of the operation. Some specialized in creating fake profiles and stolen photographs, others focused on the emotional manipulation phase, while a separate team handled the financial extraction and money laundering processes. When the hacker gained access to their communication systems, he uncovered chat logs between team members discussing Harold's case with chilling detachment. They referred to him simply as Target 7-4, and had detailed psychological profiles noting his loneliness, his deceased wife's anniversary dates, and even his daily routines that they had extracted through months of seemingly innocent conversation. The level of research and planning that went into manipulating Harold was staggering and deeply disturbing. What made this particular scammer's reaction so remarkable wasn't just the immediate panic when their systems went down, but the desperate attempts to salvage the situation even after being completely exposed. The hacker recorded audio of frantic phone calls between team members as they realized their entire operation was compromised. You could hear the genuine fear in their voices as they understood that not only had they lost access to their victim, but someone had penetrated their security and could potentially expose their identities to law enforcement. The main scammer, who had been communicating with Harold, actually attempted to contact him directly through alternative means, spinning an elaborate story about being kidnapped and needing emergency funds for ransom. Even when caught red-handed, they couldn't abandon their manipulative instincts and continued trying to extract money from their victim. The technical aspects of how the hacker dismantled this operation provide fascinating insights into modern cybersecurity warfare. He began by tracing the digital breadcrumbs left behind in Harold's email communications, identifying suspicious header information, and tracking the real origins of messages that appeared to come from domestic locations but actually originated from overseas servers. Using specialized software tools, he mapped the entire network infrastructure supporting the scam operation, discovering they were using compromised computers belonging to innocent people as relay points to hide their true location. The scammers had infected hundreds of personal computers with malware that allowed them to route their communications through these machines, making it appear as though messages were coming from legitimate American households when they were actually originating from criminal organizations thousands of miles away. Once inside their systems, the hacker discovered the shocking scale of their operation. Harold wasn't their only victim. They were simultaneously running identical scams against 43 other individuals across North America and Europe. Each victim had a detailed file containing personal information, family details, financial status assessments, and psychological manipulation strategies tailored specifically to their vulnerabilities. Some victims were widowed like Harold, others were divorced and seeking companionship, while some were simply isolated individuals craving human connection. The scammers had developed different personas for different victim types, with some posing as military personnel deployed overseas, others as business executives traveling internationally, and some as medical professionals working in remote locations. The common thread was always a compelling reason why they couldn't meet in person, while maintaining an urgent need for financial assistance. The money trail revealed the sophisticated laundering operation supporting these romance scams. Harold's $20,000 had been split into smaller amounts and transferred through a complex web of cryptocurrency exchanges, offshore banking systems, and money transfer services across multiple jurisdictions. The scammers used a technique called layering, where funds are moved through numerous accounts and converted between different currencies to obscure their origins and destinations. Some money was converted to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, then transferred through privacy-focused digital wallets before being converted back to traditional currency in countries with limited banking oversight. Other portions were moved through legitimate-appearing business accounts for fake companies that existed only on paper, complete with professional websites and fabricated business histories. The psychological manipulation techniques employed against Harold demonstrated years of refined expertise in exploiting human emotions. The scammers had studied behavioral psychology and understood exactly how to create artificial intimacy and emotional dependency. They used a technique called love bombing in the initial phases, overwhelming Harold with excessive attention, compliments, and declarations of affection to create an intense emotional bond quickly. Once this foundation was established, they gradually introduced elements of crisis and urgency, always positioning themselves as victims of circumstances beyond their control who needed Harold's help to overcome temporary obstacles. They carefully monitored his responses to determine his financial limits and emotional boundaries, adjusting their requests accordingly to maximize extraction while maintaining believability. The fake identity they had created for Harold's supposed romantic interest was a masterpiece of digital deception. They had stolen photographs from multiple social media accounts belonging to real women, carefully selecting images that showed consistency in appearance while avoiding easily reverse searchable pictures. The background story they constructed included verifiable details about locations, professions, and life experiences that could withstand casual investigation. They had created social media profiles dating back several years, complete with realistic posting histories, friend networks of other fake accounts, and interactions that appeared genuine to anyone conducting basic verification checks. The level of preparation and attention to detail required for this level of deception represents a significant investment of time and resources, indicating these weren't amateur criminals but professional fraud organizations. When confronted with evidence of their crimes, the scammers' reaction revealed the mindset of individuals who view their victims as nothing more than sources of income. Rather than showing remorse or acknowledging the emotional damage they had caused, they immediately began planning alternative approaches to continue their criminal activities. The hacker intercepted communications where they discussed creating new identities, establishing fresh communication channels, and even targeting Harold again using different personas once enough time had passed for him to potentially forget the details of his previous experience. The psychological manipulation tactics employed by these romance scammers extend far beyond simple financial requests. The anonymous hacker discovered that Harold's scammer had been using sophisticated emotional manipulation techniques that are taught in underground criminal networks. These techniques involve creating artificial emotional dependencies through carefully timed communication patterns, strategic vulnerability sharing, and manufactured crisis situations that create urgency and bypass rational thinking. The scammer would send Harold messages at specific times when elderly individuals are most likely to feel lonely, typically early morning hours and late evenings when social isolation feels most acute. They had studied Harold's routine through months of conversation, learning that he woke up at 5:30 each morning and often couldn't sleep past midnight due to his medication schedule. The timing of their messages was calculated to catch him during these vulnerable, emotional windows when his defenses were naturally lowered. What made this particular scam even more insidious was the scammer's use of Harold's deceased wife's memory as a manipulation tool. Through careful questioning disguised as caring conversation, they had learned intimate details about Harold's 43-year marriage, including his wife's favourite flowers, their anniversary traditions, and even the pet names they used for each other. The scammer began incorporating these sacred memories into their fake persona, claiming coincidental similarities that made Harold feel like his late wife was somehow guiding him toward this new relationship. They would mention loving the same obscure poetry his wife had enjoyed, sharing fabricated childhood memories that eerily paralleled stories Harold had shared about his wife's upbringing, and even claiming to have the same rare food allergy that his wife had lived with for decades. The hacker's investigation revealed that this wasn't random manipulation, but part of a sophisticated playbook used by organized romance scam operations. These criminal organizations maintain detailed psychological profiles on their victims, categorizing them by vulnerability factors, financial capacity, and emotional triggers. Harold had been classified as a high-value target due to his recent loss, substantial retirement savings, and lack of close family members who might intervene. The scammer had been assigned to his case specifically because of their training in grief manipulation and elderly victim psychology. They had spent weeks studying transcripts of successful scams against similar victims, learning the exact phrases and emotional appeals that had proven most effective in previous operations. The financial extraction process had been planned with military precision. Rather than requesting the full $20,000 immediately, which might have triggered Harold's suspicions, the scammer had created a carefully orchestrated series of escalating emergencies. It began with small requests for help with medical bills, progressing to urgent travel expenses to visit Harold, then culminating in a fabricated family crisis that required immediate financial intervention. Each request was accompanied by forged documentation that appeared legitimate to someone without expertise in detecting fraudulent paperwork. The scammer had access to professional-grade document creation software and templates that could produce convincing medical bills, travel itineraries, and legal documents that would fool most casual inspection. The emotional manipulation reached its peak when the scammer began discussing marriage and shared future plans with Harold. They sent him fabricated legal documents suggesting they were in the process of relocating permanently to his city, complete with fake apartment lease agreements and job applications at local businesses Harold had mentioned frequenting. The psychological impact of these false promises on Harold was devastating. He had begun making real-world preparations for their imagined life together, cleaning out his spare bedroom, researching local activities they could enjoy, and even consulting with his doctor about adjusting his medication schedule to accommodate a more active lifestyle with his supposed new partner. The hacker's intervention came at a critical moment when the scammer was preparing to escalate their operation significantly. Intercepted communications revealed plans to introduce additional fake personas into Harold's life, including a fabricated adult child of the scammer who would also begin building an emotional relationship with him. This secondary manipulation would have created multiple emotional pressure points, making it even more difficult for Harold to recognize the deception and exponentially increasing the potential financial damage. The criminal organization had identified Harold as such a successful target that they were prepared to invest additional resources into maintaining the long-term deception. When the hacker finally confronted the scammer directly through their own communication channels, the criminal's response revealed the callous mindset driving these operations. Rather than showing any recognition of the human cost of their actions, the scammer immediately began probing the hacker for information about their methods, attempting to turn the confrontation into a learning opportunity to improve their future criminal activities. They expressed frustration not about the harm they had caused Harold, but about the financial loss their organization would suffer from the failed operation. The scammer even attempted to recruit the hacker, suggesting they could earn more money working with the criminal organization than against it. The technical sophistication of the scammer's operation extended to their communication security and money laundering capabilities. They had established multiple layers of financial intermediaries to obscure the trail of stolen funds, using a combination of cryptocurrency exchanges, international wire transfers, and money mule networks that would have made recovery of Harold's money nearly impossible once the transfers were completed. The hacker discovered that Harold's $20,000 was intended to be split across 17 different accounts in 8 countries within hours of receipt, making traditional law enforcement recovery efforts extremely challenging. The psychological aftermath for victims like Harold extends far beyond the immediate financial loss, creating lasting trauma that affects their ability to trust and form genuine relationships in the future. The emotional toll on Harold became evident in the days following his rescue, as he struggled to process how close he came to losing his entire retirement savings to someone who never existed. The anonymous hacker who saved him continued monitoring the criminal network, discovering they had targeted over 300 elderly victims across North America in just the past 6 months. When the scammer realized their operation had been completely compromised, their reaction was a mixture of rage and disbelief, frantically attempting to salvage whatever remained of their elaborate scheme. The hacker documented every moment of the scammer's meltdown, watching as years of careful planning crumbled within hours. Harold's story represents just one victory in an ongoing war against romance scammers who steal billions of dollars annually from vulnerable people seeking genuine connection. While this particular intervention succeeded, hundreds of similar incidents occur daily, where victims aren't fortunate enough to have a digital guardian angel watching over them. Take this story as a powerful reminder to remain vigilant about online relationships, verify identities through video calls, and never send money to someone you've never met in person. If you found this story eye-opening, please subscribe for more content exposing these dangerous scams.